You do this all the time without noticing. You meet someone new. Maybe it's a coworker. Maybe it's the driver of a car you're about to step in. Maybe it's a stranger whose face appears in a little glowing square on your phone. And before they've really said anything, before you've seen a resume or a reference or a contract, some older part of you has already started working. It is scanning tone, posture, timing, confidence, warmth, danger. Not truth exactly. Something more primitive than truth. Can I trust you? That question feels modern because our lives are crowded with strangers, but it is much older than cities, older than money, older than writing. Long before laws and IDs and passwords, ancient humans had to make one of the hardest decisions any animal can make. When is another person's safety? And when are they risk? And that is tonight's mystery. How did ancient humans choose who to trust? You might think the answer is simple. Trust your family. Distrust outsiders. End of story. But that picture is too neat. Humans did not survive by only trusting blood relatives. If we had, our world would have stayed painfully small. No long-distance exchange, no shared hunts, no alliances, no trading of knowledge, tools, stories, or shelter. No larger human world. Somehow, our ancestors learned to cooperate beyond immediate kin, even though doing that always carried danger. Because trust is expensive. Give it to the wrong person and you lose food, status, safety, even your life. Refuse it too often and you lose allies, mates, information, protection, and opportunity. Ancient humans were not choosing between trust and caution. They were balancing both, every day in landscapes where mistakes had real teeth. So how do you solve that problem without paperwork? The first answer was probably the oldest one in biology. Start close. Kin mattered. Familiarity mattered. Repeated contact mattered. If you grew up around someone, if you shared campfires, if they had carried meat back before, if they had watched children before, if they had shown up in dry seasons before, your brain had data. Not perfect data, but enough to lower the risk. Trust at first was less like a leap of faith and more like a trail worn into the ground. And then there is the next layer, reciprocity. A technical word for a very old pattern. I help you now, you help me later. Among hunter-gatherers, repeated interaction makes this possible. Not because humans become saints, but because memory turns generosity into a test. If a person shares when they have plenty and vanishes when you do, people notice. If they take and never give back, people notice that too. In small groups, reputation travels faster than footsteps. You think trust begins with emotion. Often it begins with memory. Who shared? Who stayed? Who panicked? Who lied? Who acted brave when the group needed calm? Our ancestors lived in worlds where character was not hidden behind polished profiles. It leaked into daily life. You saw how someone handled hunger, exhaustion, embarrassment, fear, and power. That is when trust becomes visible. And once language deepened, something even stranger happened. Humans began outsourcing trust to conversation. In plain terms, gossip. Gossip sounds trivial now, almost petty. But in evolutionary terms, it may have been one of the most important survival tools we ever built. If I can learn from your experience with someone, I do not need to risk everything. Reputation becomes a kind of social map. Not always fair, not always accurate, but powerful. A human group with memory, language, and shared judgment can detect cheats far better than a lone individual can. That changes everything. A leopard only needs claws. Human beings built an invisible technology made of stories about each other. And this is where the common picture of ancient life starts to fall apart. We imagine prehistory as brutally physical, all spears and bones and firelight. But underneath the visible tools was another system just as important, a psychological infrastructure. Attention, memory, reputation, obligation, gratitude, suspicion, forgiveness. These were survival tools too. Still, reputation alone is not enough. Anyone can say they're generous. Anyone can perform kindness when it's easy. So humans evolved another filter, costly signals. A costly signal is a display that would be hard to fake because it requires real effort, risk, skill, or sacrifice. Think of a hunter bringing back food and sharing it widely. Think of someone standing firm in danger. Think of a person giving away resources when everyone is watching. These acts do more than solve an immediate problem. They broadcast something: I am competent, I am committed, I can afford to be generous. You may be safer with me than without me. You trust the person who keeps proving they are worth trusting. But now, the problem gets harder. What about strangers? This is where ancient humans become unexpectedly sophisticated. Archaeology shows that long before states existed, people were moving materials across serious distances. Stone from one landscape appears far from its source. Ostrich eggshell beads seem to have linked communities across wide parts of southern Africa tens of thousands of years ago. That means information, objects, and probably social obligations were traveling between groups. Which raises a stunning possibility. Ancient trust was not only personal, it was symbolic. A bead can be decoration. It can also be a handshake that lasts for years. Shared ornaments, pigments, styles, rituals, and repeated exchange may have worked like early passwords. Not magical proof, more like signals that said, I know the rules you know. I belong to a network you recognize. I am not completely unknown here. Of course, this never erased danger. Outsiders could still deceive. Insiders could still betray. Trust has always lived beside manipulation because the better humans become at reading signals, the better some humans become at faking them. That tension is ancient too. In fact, trust only matters because betrayal is possible. A world with no chance of betrayal would not need trust. It would only need certainty. So ancient humans built something more flexible than certainty. They built a process. Watch first, test slowly, share a little, see what happens, trust in layers, expand it if returned, withdraw it if broken. This sounds obvious, but it may be one of the deepest human inventions. Not fire, not language. The ability to cooperate under uncertainty. And that ability changed the scale of human life. Once you can trust beyond immediate kin, even imperfectly, your world expands. More allies, more shared childcare, more knowledge passing between camps, more resilience during drought, more options for mating, migration. One study of modern hunter-gatherer camp life found that stable camps make reciprocity easier because repeated interactions allow trust and reputation to grow. That principle likely reaches deep into our past. The hidden story of humanity may be this: we did not become powerful because we were individually strong. We became powerful because we learned how to make other minds less dangerous. That is a quote worth keeping. But there is another side to it. The same mind that can trust can also divide. Our systems for choosing who feels safe and who feels suspicious did not disappear when we built civilization. They followed us into nations, offices, neighborhoods, apps, and political tribes. We still use versions of ancient cues: familiarity, shared symbols, recommendation, reputation, signs of competence, signs of generosity, signs that someone is one of us. And we still get it wrong. That may be the most unsettling part. The ancient machinery of trust is brilliant, but it was built for small groups, repeated contact, visible behavior, and slow-moving information. Modern life breaks those conditions constantly. We judge strangers at scale. We absorb gossip from thousands of voices. We use status as a shortcut for character. We trust confidence more than honesty. We read symbols and mistake them for souls. In that sense, your brain is trying to run a Stone Age trust algorithm in a world of airports, algorithms, and edited selves. No wonder it misfires. So how did ancient humans choose who to trust? Not by discovering some perfect inner detector, not by innocence, not by pure logic. They used kinship, familiarity, reciprocity, reputation, costly signals, shared ritual, group memory, and slow testing. They built trust the way beavers build dams, piece by piece in response to pressure, because survival demanded it. And maybe that is the deeper answer. Trust was never the opposite of fear. Trust was what humans invented because fear alone was not enough. You cannot raise children, cross harsh landscapes, defend a camp, or carry knowledge across generations if every other person is just a possible threat. At some point, survival requires a gamble. A careful gamble, a watched gamble, a human gamble. Which brings this whole story back to you. Every time you decide whether to open up, whether to believe an apology, whether to hire someone, follow someone, date someone, vote for someone, or hand them the small vulnerable pieces of your life, you are participating in an ancient experiment. You are not just asking, are they telling the truth? You are asking a much older question. Can my future survive contact with your intentions? That may be what trust has always been. Not certainty, not naivete, not blindness. A bridge built by a nervous species that needed each other anyway. And maybe the most haunting part is this. Civilization did not solve the problem of trust, it only scaled it up. Which means the real question was never just how ancient humans chose who to trust. It is whether we, with all our systems and screens and institutions, have become any wiser than they were at seeing who is safe, and who only looks safe